Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to be here with you today. Just a quick note. So I'm Rebecca Arnold, and I will be leading us today in this journey through mindfulness. This is recorded, so just an FYI to everyone. And I'm really so grateful to the Belonging Project for having me here today. Just a little bit of background about the Belonging Project. It's a national effort to support and build community among diverse law students, attorneys, and their allies to combat the impact of COVID-19 on diversity in the profession. It brings together legal industry partners to provide tools, resources, and programs to support the continuing personal and professional development of diverse legal talent. It brings the power of Ubuntu, the universal bond we have as people, and the focus on collective responsibility to the legal community. So as we go forward, you are welcome to put any questions or comments in the Q&A, and folks will be monitoring that for me so that if any questions arise, we can manage them. But also, we are a Mind Hive here, so I encourage you all to chime in if your colleagues have questions and you have some insights to share. So a little bit about me. I am a certified leadership coach, and I have a coaching company called Root Coaching and Consulting. My clients are, for the most part, unhappy overachievers. They are in some way striving for more meaning or more balance in their lives or greater well-being. And so that has looked like a physician on the brink of burnout, reconnecting with their purpose and what brought them to medicine in the first place, learning some tools and resources so they could really access greater resilience. Or a higher education leader who was managing being a parent and a leader and felt like they couldn't really lean into their authentic leadership and be the kind of parent they wanted to be. And so managing that. I use a framework that I call Transform, Amplify, Thrive. And it's really around transforming and reconnecting with the essence of you, amplifying your impact at work, in your relationships, in your communities, and then thriving, which we're really going to dig into today, which is about looking at your well-being and your health and habits that support you in having the life you really want. So I love this image over here on the side. It's me, but it's also how I want my clients to feel when we're done with our work together. And there was a great irony. I got a holiday card from a client who sent me a picture of herself in almost the exact same posture. So it really is such gratifying work. And I am so thrilled to dive into this with you today. I'm a non-practicing attorney as well, so I understand the world and the pool you're all swimming in. And I practice yoga, meditation, and Reiki, which has really given me a lot of insights into how we show up in the present moment and what tools we have available to us. So in terms of our plan for today, I'm going to be introducing you to micro-nourish practices, which are really bite-sized mindfulness exercises that you can use throughout the day, many times a day, a couple times a week, whatever's the cadence that really aligns with you. We'll talk a little bit about our current context and what is really challenging in this moment, which we're all really familiar with, but don't always have kind of the scientific background to understand what's happening kind of in the background for all of us. We'll talk a little bit about the impacts of stress. And then this is really going to be a smorgasbord approach to mindfulness. I'm going to introduce you to lots of different strategies. The idea is that some will resonate with you and some will not, and that's completely fine. My objective is just to offer a bunch to you and have you experiment and see what really aligns with what you need. Then we'll go into some levers of resourcefulness, and we will end with you looking at some commitments you want to make about your own mindfulness practices. Again, if you have questions as we go, please drop them in the Q&A and support each other as things come up, because there's a ton of wisdom here today. So this first practice I call presencing, and this is our first micro-nourish practice. So what I'm going to invite you to do, this is about really getting present in your body. The beauty of the body is that it helps bring us directly into the present. Our sensations of our body are happening in the present. They didn't happen yesterday. It's not tomorrow. Whatever we're experiencing right now in our bodies is the present. And it's sort of a shortcut to that really presence of mind too. Stress, when we think about stress and anxiety, all of that happens when we are thinking about the past and ruminating on something that happened in the past, or projecting into the future about something we're worried about in the future. If you really think about it in this moment right now, everything is fine. It's only when we start those thoughts, fast forwarding forward or going to the back, that stress arises. So again, the body is an anchor to the present. So I'm going to invite you to just feel your feet on the floor and your back against the chair. Just notice your breath. You don't need to do anything with it, just notice. This natural cadence of our breath is there all the time. We just don't always pay attention to it. Now notice your legs. How do your legs feel? Notice your hands. Are they resting on something? And as you travel up your body, just focus for a moment on your jaws and just relax them. We hold a lot of tension here. And then that space between your eyebrows, just let that relax too. Great. So that just took a minute or so. And notice if you feel any different now than you did a few moments ago before we did this. Any bit of this, your feet, your legs, your jaw, any way that we are really connecting to our body helps us get present. So I like to think about these micro-nourish mindfulness practices as having compounding impact. So just like in the bank, we put a penny in today and it grows and grows and grows. Same thing with these micro-nourish practices. We can think about them as dosing them throughout the day. So imagine if you did that presencing exercise every time you sat down to check your email, just for 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Would you feel different? Would your day feel different? Would the tasks you do throughout the day feel different? And so when those add up, they really change the baseline of how calm and resourced we feel. So our current context, I like to use the metaphor that it's a marathon, except there are a couple of asterisks. So it's a marathon, but we don't know when the finish line is. So I've talked with some firms that have released new dates about when they're going back to the office, and it keeps changing. And every time that happens, the finish line moves a little bit. Or there's more information about vaccine, and we think the finish line is here, and then we get some bad news about the vaccines, and it goes further. And so that's part of the stress of this moment in time. It's also like a marathon on a tightrope because we are balancing so much. As we are kind of going day to day, we're balancing our own emotional well-being and safety. So choices about who we see, how we see them, what we do takes on even greater significance and thoughtfulness. So just running to the bakery or grabbing a cup of coffee, we have to be really mindful about this. Some of us are managing work and caregiving. How do we structure our day so that we get what needs to get done, and we're supporting older family members, neighbors, people in our community, or our children. And then our parents, our partners, our friends, our community all have different needs that we're also balancing. So when we start to recognize the load, it starts to make sense of why many of us feel triggered more quickly. Many of us are finding it harder to concentrate. Tasks, I know for my clients, are taking much longer than they did before the pandemic. And this is all expected given what our systems are managing. And mindfulness practices are a way to really get our system back into better equilibrium. Some of you probably saw this in an intro psych class at some point, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I like this because, again, it helps set the context for what we're all managing right now. Earlier in the pandemic, many of us were really at this purple level of our physiological needs. We were thinking about, when am I going to get toilet paper? Is it going to be safe to go to the grocery store? Do I have enough food in the house right now? And the way Maslow's hierarchy of needs works, of course, is that you have to satisfy each level before you can move up a level. So once we kind of met those needs, we started to think about safety. Am I safe? Are my parents safe? Are my friends safe? The blue area is the world of work. How successful are we feeling about work and our projects and what we're up to? And then the top layer is really about purpose and creativity. And am I living kind of in that sweet spot of what I am most drawn to do? And so what can happen is that we'll be in the blue. We'll be cooking away on a memo, feeling really good about what we're doing. And then we might get a news report pop up about COVID rates in our area, and we drop into the green and start to feel like, am I unsafe? Are my kids unsafe? What's going to happen with work? And that drop down requires a lot of cognitive and emotional energy to get back up into the blue and refocus and concentrate on what we were doing. And you'll notice for yourself and your colleagues, if you start to pay attention, you'll hear some clues about where they're struggling on this hierarchy. So you might hear, I didn't sleep well last night, right? So that's really in our physiological needs. If you hear, so that might be a night of bad sleep. If you hear, I haven't slept well for weeks, you know that purple area is really not doing well. Similarly, oh, I kind of miss folks is the yellow area, or I haven't seen my family for a year and I'm desperate to see them. It's extremely hard to concentrate when we're feeling deep loneliness. So we can start to just recognize where these needs are cropping up and to start meeting them really intentionally, of course. We are also seeing a rise in mental health concerns during COVID. So this survey by the CDC from late June found massive increases in mental and behavioral health concerns. We know that there was an epidemic of loneliness before the pandemic, and now it is rampant, especially for folks who are single. So when I talk with law firms, I always mention this because it's important to check on our people and make sure that our people are really supported. So that might mean checking in with a friend who you know is on their own or a colleague, but being mindful about this. And of course, stress and substance abuse come along with this. At the same time, we know that the legal profession has been deeply focused on mental health and well-being and substance abuse. There have been bar reports, well-being committees, lawyer assistance programs that are really deeply invested in working on this, and the pandemic has exacerbated this. So this is sort of the context that we are all operating within. We know that stress has massive impacts on our emotions. So it causes anxiety, of course. We are more likely to see something that's sort of neutral, to treat it as problematic or to get aroused in terms of our stress response over something that's relatively innocuous when we're under a lot of stress. We also know that stress has physical impacts, of course. Elevated heart rate, sweating, our immune system being suppressed at a time when we most need our immune systems. And we know that it has cognitive impacts as well. So studies show we have a sharp dip in our IQ when we're under extreme stress. We are less likely to be able to access our prefrontal cortex, which is where our higher level thought comes from, and we are less likely to access our creativity. So when we take these three things together, the emotional impacts, the physical impacts, and the cognitive impacts, it becomes pretty stark that it's really important to prioritize how we're feeling. And again, mindfulness is a strategy for that. So I love this quote. Incredible change happens in your life when you decide to take control over what you do have power over instead of craving control over what you don't. We can get really hyper focused as humans over what we don't have control over. And there's a lot right now, of course. And there's a ton that we do have control over. For many of us, how we spend our day, how we support ourselves, what we have for dinner, what we're wearing that day, how we're prioritizing our self-care, right? If we were to make a list, there would be hundreds of things on there that are within our control. But we forget, we sort of screen those things out and just look at what we don't have control over. So this is an invitation to really dig into what we have control over. And mindfulness is one of those things. So this is a quote from John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of the four thinkers in mindfulness. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises by paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So attention, where is my focus, right? Where's my mind? Because oftentimes our mind is not on the task at hand, of course. On purpose, right? We're being very intentional about our attention itself and how connected we are to the present moment. The present moment, like I said before, in the present moment, we're actually fine. We are safe, we are okay, we have a roof, we are not in crisis. If something has happened where we are in crisis in that moment, of course we have to attend to it. But oftentimes that's all in our head, either anticipating or revisiting. And then non-judgmentally. So if we're very aware, on purpose, in the present moment, and just swimming in self-doubt and negative self-talk, that's not really where we want to be, right? We want to be really have this sense of compassion, self-compassion, and non-judgmental. So we're gonna have Mike, our fearless tech support here, run a poll for us about how often you use your mindfulness practices. So this is just an opportunity to kind of dipstick, take a look at where you are now. Are you doing it daily, weekly, monthly, or not at all? And when we get a snapshot of that, we'll have a little bit of a sense of where we need to go in terms of how you can start to shift that if you want to, if you feel like this would be a supportive practice for you. So when that's all set, we will see the results of the survey come in. So it's just ended, and Mike will show that on the screen. So, wow, most of you are doing this weekly. Great. Mindfulness practices weekly. And so my invitation to you during this is to try to look at what it might be like to kind of microdose these practices throughout the day, just a couple of them for very short amounts of time. So we'll go to our next question now, which is really about the barriers to mindfulness practice. And many folks have lots of barriers. There's no judgment here, but it is an opportunity to look at what some of those barriers are that might be getting in your way. If we accept that this area of practice might have some real benefits for you. So some folks don't know how to do it, which we will dive into today. This idea that it takes a lot of time, or it's hard to get into a rhythm or establish a habit. Some folks just don't want to, and that's fine. And maybe there are no barriers, but you just haven't done it yet. So it's been harder to identify what's really getting in your way. So again, this is non-judgmental. It's just an opportunity to see where the blocks and barriers are. So don't know to and hard to kind of create a habit are the two kind of in the lead, tied for the lead, and then it takes a lot of time. Great. So we're going to dive into some of the myths around this and talk a little bit about how you create habits around this so that it can be really supportive of your mindfulness practice. Thanks, Mike, for managing that for us. So we're going to close that window now. So we know that there are scientifically shown impacts of mindfulness. It builds resilience and well-being. It mitigates stress. So the more we do this, the more tolerance we have for stress. We know that it has cognitive impacts in terms of focus and discernment. So when you look at, there are CEOs of major companies and organizations that will carve out 45 minutes a day to meditate. Why do they do this? Because they realize it actually buys them time. By carving out that amount of time, they're gaining that time back through greater mental clarity, better discernment, less wheel spinning, right? Running from thing to thing, losing a lot of time with task switching and multitasking. Instead, they have a lot more clear focus and better discernment about what the priorities are. And so they know that's time well spent. And there's been some studies looking at the impact of mindfulness on decision making and acting in alignment with our values. Sometimes when we are not connected with ourselves and kind of are in that feeling of that frenzy of the rat race, it can be very hard to get the distance to pull back and really make thoughtful decisions. We can just be very reactive. And as we talked about before, when we're under great stress, we can perceive something as relatively innocuous as a threat. And so mindfulness is a way to get some space from that, to really access our higher level thinking and creativity. Okay, we're gonna do a couple of practices now around our breath. So like our body, our breath is a great way to access the present. There are lots of folks whose meditation practice is just staying with their breath for long periods of time, and that helps them remain really present. So whenever we do a breath, it's helpful to ground. So I just invite you to put your feet on the floor, your back against the chair, and just feel that support that's there. Great. The first breath is called the breath of equal duration. It's very simple. It's just the same count, inhaling and exhaling, and we'll do a count of 4. Now, everyone's breath pattern is different. So I'm going to count for you. If my count is too slow, go ahead and speed it up. And if it's too fast, slow it down so that it feels like a natural breath pattern for you. We don't want to be doing, right? Because that's going to activate us. Instead, it's a slow, steady breath. Great. So again, feet on the floor, your back against the chair. We're going to inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. We're going to do it one more time. And I just want you to notice if your thoughts start to be in here too, instead of just having kind of a empty space in your mind, just let the thoughts come in and out like clouds passing by or like leaves in a stream. You don't need to get attached to them or be upset that they're there. It's just letting them come in and out. So we're going to try this again. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Again, just notice if you feel any different than before we started the breath. And notice if that prompt about your thoughts and just letting your thoughts come in and out without getting attached to them supported you. Lots of folks do find a prompt like that supportive, and just remembering that we're going to lose our attention and kind of wander off in our thoughts, and that's fine. We are human. It is natural. We don't beat ourselves up about it. It's just we just come back to our breath as an anchor. I'm going to teach you another breath now called box breath. And it's called this because you can draw a box while we're doing this. So we're going to inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4. The Navy SEALs use this breath, so you are in exceptional company by learning this one. So I'm going to lead you through 3 rounds of this. Same thing with your thoughts. If they come in, no worries. They just let them come in and out and not get attached to them. So we're going to feel our feet on the floor, your back against the chair. We're going to inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Again, in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. So again, notice which of those breaths feel like it really resonated with you. And it might be both, and that's great. Again, the idea here is to give you a buffet of options. What's great about box breath is that it can have this tactile element to it. So you don't have to draw it in the air. You could just count if you wanted to, or you could draw a box on a piece of paper or in the palm of your hand during a meeting. But it can be a way to link our breath to muscle memory. So what happens with me sometimes, before I sit down to meditate, I do the same kind of movements with my body. I roll my shoulders down and back, I straighten my spine, and I take a deep breath in and out. And my body has learned, okay, now it's time to meditate. We're going to settle down a little bit. Same thing if you do these breaths and follow a similar routine where you just feel your feet on the floor, your back against the chair, and maybe take out a paper and do a few box breaths. It's much simpler to get back into it with that practice. It's just like riding a bike. Again, if you have questions as we go, just drop them in the Q&A and I'm happy to answer them as we go. So now we're going to use our senses. Again, like our body is a way to get present, our breath is a way to get present, and using our senses is a way to get present. Excuse me. And we're going to use our visual and our auditory system. So Shirzad Chamine came up with this practice. He's the founder of Positive Intelligence. And he uses these very short sense practices to help us access our deeper wisdom instead of, in order to combat our inner critic. So we're going to use a couple of these practices now. Again, you're just going to feel your feet on the floor. And I want you to just look at this picture. that's on the screen. Notice the details. Perhaps it's the ripples, or maybe you see the shades of blue. Perhaps you notice something far in the distance. Great. So that again was about 20 seconds. And we are using our senses all the time, but we're not conscious to it. And so this kind of hyper focus using one of our senses can be a great way to get present relatively quickly. And we can use an image like this. We can look out the window or look at a plant on our desk or an object. But what's great is when we look at something that's familiar to us as if we see it for the first time, because we're really activating our sense of wonder, which we know brings us calm and grounding at the same time. And it also, again, activates the senses to get present. Now we're going to switch to our auditory system. So I want you to just notice the farthest sound you can hear. It might be something outside, or perhaps something in your house. What's the farthest sound you can hear? Great. Now notice the closest sound you can hear. It might be the sound of my voice or something on your desk that's making noise. It's the closest sound you can hear. See if you notice the pitch variation in my voice. Great. All right, we're going to do one more, which is sense of touch. So I'm going to just have you rub your hands together if you're able to do that for a few seconds. And then just feel the warmth and sort of that sense of vibration maybe that might be left in your hands. If you put your hands close together, can you feel that warmth? Do you notice anything else as your hands are almost touching? Great. So again, these senses are a great way for us to get out of our head and just into whatever the present moment is. And if you use these senses a few times throughout the day, just think about how different your day would feel. All right, so those have been shorter. And now we're going to move into a relatively quick practice, but it's a little bit longer. It's a visualization. If you've never done visualization before, there is no right or wrong to them. It's just a way to sort of settle our system down and get connected to wisdom that we have inside of us that we can't always connect to because it's busy up here and there's a lot going on. So I just want you to make sure you have something nearby to write with. And I'm going to lead you through this visualization. It's just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to have you gently close your eyes if you're comfortable, or have a soft gaze if you're not comfortable closing your eyes. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your feet deeply rooted to the ground. Just notice the solidity there. Feel your back held by the back of the chair. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just relax. Whatever thoughts come into your mind, just let them go without judgment. Let them drift away. Picture a place where you feel calm and serene. It might be a beach, a forest, a mountaintop, or even a field of grass. Wherever your place is, be there right now. Notice the light, hear the sounds. Notice the colors as you take it all in. Notice how relaxed your body feels in this place. And how your mind settles and slows down. What are the emotions you feel here? Are you filled with gratitude, hope, or some other feeling? Be present in this place. We're going to leave soon, but take a few moments to look around and soak in this place. Pay attention to the calm in your body. Know that you can return here anytime you wish. When you're ready, feel your feet on the floor, your back against the chair. Feel firmly rooted and flutter your eyes open when you're ready. I'm going to have you jot down how you felt during that visualization. I'm going to give you a few moments. I would love to invite you to pop in the Q&A. Any emotions or insights you had when you were in this place? How did you feel? What did you notice? What was this place like? And by putting that in the Q&A, your colleagues will be able to see too what everyone kind of has access to in a place like this. And our experiences can be really aligned and also different. So again, I just invite you to put that in the Q&A so you can see each other's thoughts about this. This is a great strategy for helping us evoke feelings of calm. Normally people pick a place that feels really calm and relaxing. Great. So someone shared quiet and calm. Terrific. And people can you can put an image of a place that helps evoke those feelings, or an object from a place. So I feel this way at the beach. I always have sand dollars on my desk. And every time I see the sand dollar, it's like a prompt. It's almost like muscle memory, but it's a prompt to feel those same feelings that I experience when I'm at the beach. So someone else shared safe and peaceful. Great. If you have the opportunity to go to this place, just notice how you feel there. So there could be this beautiful connection when you've had an experience like this in a visualization, and then return to a place like that and have that lived sense of being in that place. Occasionally people feel, especially during the pandemic, a sense of sadness or longing when you think about this kind of place, because for some of us, we haven't been able to access a place that's really special to us. For others of us, it's a gift to kind of be able to see it in our imagination or connect with it through an image or an object. So again, this is a strategy that's available to you when you're feeling really stressed and want to have a sense of quiet or calm or peace or safety, like your colleagues have shared. you can pull out a picture or an image to evoke those sensations and feelings. So another strategy I want to talk to you briefly about is gratitude practice. Okay, so someone asked a question, how do I keep my feelings of anxiety away in a happy place? I feel anxious when I'm not working on my to-do list during the workday. Does that get easier with practice? Yes, it gets easier with practice. And thank you for asking that question. So what can happen is that we think that by continuing to think about something, we're making it better. So when we're trying to relax, we think that revisiting our to-do list is going to help us to get it done or help us remember to do it. And so sometimes I have found with some of my clients, when they're sitting down to meditate or sitting down to do something they find relaxing, writing down a couple of things to just get it off their mind can help release it. Or saying to themselves, my to-do list will be waiting for me when I'm done. Or I have plenty of time. So it's these sort of affirmations that help us recalibrate our system and get away from the habit of kind of spinning ourselves up as a way to think that we are actually going to be better able to get something done. What we actually know is if we build in this time to kind of relax and restore, it will be easier to get our to-do list done. But our brains haven't learned that lesson yet. We know better, but our brains sometimes are just used to, it's a well-worn path. So it's a matter of practice. So thanks for asking that question. So in terms of a gratitude practice, lots of folks keep a gratitude list. And I used to do this. I used to keep a gratitude journal. I'd write down 5 things I was grateful for before bed, which was great. And our family did it at dinner. And it was a great family practice. We ended up, our kids would start noticing during the day, they would have an experience or see something and they would say, oh, this is the thing I'm going to talk about at dinner that I'm grateful for. And so it would build in that habit and practice, which is fantastic. If you're wanting to take your gratitude practice to a second step, I'm going to teach you something that Rick Hanson talks about, who studies neuroscience and has a great way to kind of solidify our gratitude. So I'm going to explain to you what I mean. I want you to think about something that you're grateful for. It could be like very, very tiny micro, like a cup of coffee, or the sweater you're wearing, or the sunshine, or your house, whatever it is, something that you're grateful for. And instead of just moving along, which is what can happen sometimes when we write gratitude lists, we just write our list and move on. I want you to do what Rick Hanson talks about, which is letting the feeling of gratitude grow in you. So oftentimes gratitude is a feeling of softening or warming. Our heart might feel warm or soft, or stomach might relax. We all have slightly different variations of this in terms of how it actually feels in our bodies. But when we get connected to that feeling of gratitude, we can imagine it sinking into us. It's like our body soaks in that feeling of gratitude. We can even have that feeling of gratitude extend throughout our whole bodies and sink in. So if I feel it in my heart, it's softening. I can imagine that warmth and softening move through my arms and out my fingertips, and then down the trunk of my body, down my legs, down to my feet. And what this does, which Rick Hanson talks about, is it helps us to really be able to access this feeling of gratitude later and remember it so it's not fleeting. And it helps us to recall it when we want to. So if we're feeling stressed and we want to recall something we're grateful for, it's locked in. And it does something about, there's something about this practice of it being in our bodies that can help us feel less in here and more in our hearts or more throughout our bodies, which can feel really powerful. So I invite you, if you have a gratitude practice, to try this out. Try to take one thing that you're grateful for and have that feeling of it sinking into you and extending through your body. The other gratitude practice I want to introduce you to is just practicing with parts of us that we're grateful for. So I've done this with my hand, for example, and I think about all the things I'm grateful to my hand for. So one thing is writing the bar exam. This hand wrote the entire bar exam back in the day when we had to use erasable pens. I don't know if we still do this. It held my daughter and it held my son. It allowed me to touch their skin and feel the softness of it. It helped me walk my dog or drive across the country and see everything there is to see. And I notice when I do that, I get a little tingling in my hand, the sense of gratitude that goes almost from my heart through my hand. So this takes a little bit of practice, which is fine if it doesn't happen immediately for you. But it's this nice way of linking our cognitive feelings of gratitude with our bodies. And you can do this with an object again, or with parts of you that you're grateful for. I tried this with a client who had a physical challenge with a part of her body. And it was incredible to see that instead of it feeling adversarial, this part of her body that didn't work very well, instead they were able to connect with this like feelings of warmth and gratitude for what it was able to help her do. And so it's kind of shifting the narrative for some of us when we have challenges around that. Any questions about this gratitude practice? It might feel a little bit odd or different. That's fine. Again, it's just a matter of trying it out and practicing. And if it doesn't resonate, that's fine. But again, this is our menu of options. All right, we're going to shift now to levers of resourcefulness, which is sort of, I think about it as like a little bit of a branch on mindfulness. So you'll see what I mean in a moment. So the first is self-compassion. Many of us spend lots and lots of time in our brains. And that's great. Our brains work great. But we don't spend as much time in our hearts, and especially talking to ourselves in kind ways. Many of us have a very overactive inner critic that can say things like, you don't know what you're doing. Why are you doing it like that? You're so dumb. Didn't you even think about this? Who do you think you are? And it's this tape that runs. And so it's almost like you can think of it as your inner critic, you're walking around trying to do something, and your inner critic knocks you down. And then you have to have all the effort to kind of get back up and recover from it. And then your inner critic knocks you down again. And it takes an extraordinary amount of energy. So what I see in my clients is they make this shift from being run by their inner critic to having a different relationship with their inner critic where they have more distance from it and are much more able to access self-compassion. And then they feel like they have much more resourcefulness. They're not like kind of at battle with something while trying to get something done, right? If you're trying to write a memo and the whole time you have this narrative going on about you don't know what you're doing, who do you think you are, you're never going to get this done, all of that kind of stuff, it takes away from the cognitive resources and emotional resources you have available to you. So a very simple practice to shift this is first to notice when your inner critic is activated. We all have it. So this is a normal thing. So there's no judgment. We all have an inner critic, and it comes about because it thinks it's helping us. Its methods are suspect, but its intention is pure. And so we just start to notice that it's there and we shift. So instead, if we hear this negative self-talk, happening, we just say, oh, we're noticing it. And then we shift to something else. Like, you've done this before. You know what you're doing. And we start to just feed ourselves with positive messages instead. So a phrase I have been offering folks is, in terms of the pandemic, is this is hard and I'm doing my best. It's an acknowledgement of the situation we're all managing. And it's an acknowledgement that we are not perfect and we can't be expected to be perfect or perform at the level we were before without extraordinary effort. Because of what we talked about before, this marathon without a finish line on a tightrope, right? There's no way that we're going to be able to perform at the speed and efficiency and quality we were before without exceptional energy on our part. So I've seen a client change from negative self-talk around, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this other thing, to I can create the life I want for myself, and how that transformed everything else. It was like a tectonic mental shift. And so that's what's available when we start to practice more self-compassion. The second piece is boundaries. I know there's lots of talk about boundaries, but when we think about what happens when we don't maintain boundaries, it can be, I think, quite motivating to create some boundaries. So what happens when we don't have boundaries is we have fewer resources for the things we really care about, like our family, ourselves, our friends. We can feel unwell. We can feel like our well-being just tanks, and our stores get depleted. right? So it takes us a lot more energy to bounce back, a lot more energy to do things that we want to do. And so boundaries are really a way of honoring ourselves and what we need. So work boundaries, of course, are starting to have conversations and being honest about what you can and can't take on right now, given what's happening for you at home. And I know that different organizations are different in terms of what's available, in terms of flexibility and all of that. So accessing colleagues and mentors and other folks to really support you in that, in recognizing what's reasonable for you to take on right now. Work-life boundaries, lots of folks, of course, with the pandemic are adapting when they work, how they work, what works looks like, and being really flexible and kind of playing with things and experimenting and seeing what works. And so what works for you during school vacation week might look different than what works for you at other times. What works with your kids' fall schedule and what works in the spring can be really different. If you're on your own, recognizing the importance of prioritizing connections with other people and how you're not getting that at home and what the impact of that is can be crucial, both for your own well-being and how you can perform at work, of course. Because if we're feeling cruddy, it's going to affect our work. In our relationships, we can start paying attention to relationships that give us more vitality and relationships that suck our vitality. And so then we can start to make choices about how we want to spend our time. And so I find when I work with clients around looking at their boundaries and playing with boundaries and experimenting, they can really start to feel much more empowered about the choices they're making instead of feeling like they're falling into defaults. It becomes more purposeful. Another lever for resourcefulness is perspective. So you all are in the legal field, you know that there are very few facts and lots of different perspectives on those facts. And sometimes we forget that about life. We start to think that things are facts instead of our perspective on them. And when we start to play with perspective and recognize what empowering perspective feels like and what a disempowering perspective feels like, we can start to make different choices about how we frame things in our own minds and how we talk to ourselves. So I had a client who said, all I do at work is just grow other people's wealth. And I said, of course you don't feel motivated if that's the perspective on it, right? What other perspectives are available to you? I create products, I help support products that come to market that make people's lives better. I'm building this skill set. I'm really curious about how to do this particular work, right? Those are all different perspectives that feel really different. And so this can be another one of those tectonic shifts for people when they start to recognize how perspectives and their thinking on something affect how they feel about it, and that they have a choice. We have a choice about what meaning making we have. Purpose is another huge lever for us. And what can happen is we can get really disconnected from our purpose. And so you can start really being mindful about connecting with your purpose. And so I want to offer you a couple of prompts in terms of your purpose at work. Your purpose might be mentoring. Your purpose might be moving forward the area of law that you practice in. It might be how you're showing up and supporting your colleagues. It might be your fundamental love of the law. So what I want you to think about is why you work in the law in the first place. And it might help to think about that first day you started law school, or the first day you started working at a firm, and what you were really excited to dig into, or which tasks you love at your job. So I'd love to have you pop those in the Q&A. What are components of your purpose? Why do you do what you do? What lights you up and gets you excited about the work you're doing? You might feel really disconnected from that right now, and that's totally normal, right, during the pandemic. But the invitation that I'm offering is to start to think about why I do this work in the first place. What do I love about it? What skills am I developing? What gets me excited? Great. So someone shared to see old things in new ways and make new connections. Beautiful. I used to love that moment when the theory of the case becomes clear to me. And I've honed in on the argument that feels like, yes. And that really got me excited and motivated and jumping out of bed to work on something. That's the power of purpose. So again, would love to have folks share what you're uncovering about what you love about your work, what the essence of your purpose is and what you're doing. And if it's hard to connect with that, again, that's totally normal right now. And spending some time to reconnect with that the moment you started your job, the moment you found out you were going to be working at your job, the day you were sworn in, the day you got your bar results, the day you supported a new staff member at your firm and you knew they were going to do a fantastic job and that they wouldn't be able to do it without you supporting them. The way that you back up folks at your firm so that the work continues seamlessly, right? Any way that you really plug in and helps you feel aligned with your work can be a really important lever of resourcefulness when you're feeling unmotivated, disconnected, worn down. And we can start to just connect with that purpose. So if you, every time you looked at, started your calendar for the day and put in 8 a.m. and your purpose there, would that make any difference? It's something to try out. All right, so we're going to move to commitments now. I know some of you talked about how it's challenging to create a habit around mindfulness. And so I want to introduce you to this kind of concept that BJ Fogg talks about in his book, Tiny Habits, which is very simple. It just means breaking something down into a tiny step. So BJ Fogg talks about he wanted to build his upper body strength. Every time he went to the bathroom, he did one push-up. And then he celebrated. He had a parade for himself in really rooting himself on that he had done this. And then he said, well, if I'm here doing one push-up, I may as well do two. And it built from there. So instead of saying, I'm going to do 10 push-ups, which felt completely unreasonable, he started very simply. Similarly, his dentist said, you need to floss your teeth regularly. So he said, fine. He committed to flossing one tooth. Would any dentist ever recommend that as good dental hygiene? No. But when he was there brushing one tooth, he thought, why not do two? And then three. And the floss was out. It was easily accessible, right? So he's reduced the barrier so you didn't have to go digging around for it, and increase the ease of trying this new habit and then celebrate. So if you want to try a mindfulness practice that involves your senses, for example, just choose one. So once a day, I'm going to just look at an image for 30 seconds. I'll set a timer. It will be easy. I'll have the image up there available to me, so I'll reduce the barrier. And after I do it, I'm going to jump up and down and be excited for myself, or do a little dance, right? Whatever feels like a celebration to you. It becomes very simple and very attainable. And again, we can increase ease by so when my yoga mat is out all the time, because I don't want to have to go digging in my closet for it. And every time I pass it, I think I need to sit to meditate for a minute. So it's just creating these habits by increasing the ease and decreasing the resistance. We can also link it to something we already do. So BJ Fogg linked it to going to the bathroom. You can link it to, when I work with school systems, I talk about every time you sanitize, take a breath, a couple of breaths, right? Because they're sanitizing all the time during the day. It's something they're doing already. If you check your email 7 times a day, what would it be like to feel your feet on the floor, your back against the chair every time you do it? Or say to yourself, this is hard and I'm doing my best. Right, so we can start to make those linkages for us so it's not so hard to create a new habit. A couple of myths I want to dispel. I don't have enough time for this. We've talked about the CEOs that spend 45 minutes meditating because they realize they buy time by doing that. The practices I've shown you today take very little time. The most was the visualization that was a few minutes. The others are around 30 seconds, right? Everyone has 30 seconds. I can schedule these things last. No, we want to think about this as, like we talked about, the compounding impact, doing them throughout the day or scattering them throughout the week. We can do these very short intervals and get a lot of bang for the buck. We know that if we run ourselves dry and just say, I'm holding out for the weekend, it doesn't work the same way as helping our system reset continually by doing these practices. So I would love to have you make some commitments to trying something. Of this buffet, what really resonated most with you? Was it the breath? Was it the presencing? Was it the visualization? Or using our senses? What was it? When do you want to do this? So every Monday night, I'm going to sit for 2 minutes and meditate, or 2 minutes and do breaths. Or every time I check my email, I'm going to commit to looking at this image I find very calming, right? Whatever it is, we want to be really clear about what we want to commit to, when it's going to happen. If you need a buddy to back you up and nudge you and cheer you on, go ahead and text them, email them, tell them what you're up to. Many of us do better when we feel like we have someone in it with me. I just finished 4 weeks of core strength. I didn't do it alone. I did it with my husband because I knew that I needed someone to be there with me and cheer me on, right? It feels totally different than committing to something on my own. Many of us need buddies, and there's no shame in that. We're humans. We like connection. And then making it real. So putting it on your calendar, having sticky notes, really deciding that you want to do something differently because you know you'll feel different. And then as you start to do these practices, you may notice that you want to shift things. So I actually feel better if I do some of these practices in the morning than the afternoon. Or I realize that if I do 4 of these a day, that's my sweet spot. Or Mondays are a really tough day, so I need to prioritize doing this. You can start to iterate and see what works so that you're aligned with kind of matching what your needs are in some of these practices. So I'd love to have you put in the Q&A what you want to commit to. So again, which of these mindfulness practices really most resonate for you that you want to try out on a regular basis, knowing that you will feel differently when you do them? So have you all populate the Q&A as we do that. And then I just wanted to offer you my contact information. This is my email. And I am offering 5 spaces for a one-on-one breakthrough coaching session if you email me today. So again, just 5 of those. I'll do a lottery if there are more than 5 of you that reach out. Again, it'll be a breakthrough coaching session. We can dive into whatever works best for you or where your blocks are. But again, emailing me by today. The CLE code for folks who need that is SS, like Sam, 8792. Again, it's SS 8792. And someone shared that they really liked this visualization. This is recorded, so if you wanted to revisit it, you're welcome to do it. And want to do this with your partner during lunch break for 3 minutes once a week. Beautiful. So love how specific that is and how you have a buddy and how you've been really clear about how much time you're devoted to in doing that. Great. Thank you for sharing that. So I will hang on for a couple of minutes if folks have questions. Thank you for being here with us and for engaging in the Q&A. Again, you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. You will be getting the slides and the recording. If you want to revisit any of this or play with some of the practices again and again, you're welcome to do that. And again, reach out if you have any questions, but I will stay on for a couple more minutes if you have any other questions you want to dive into.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was great.
Yes, of course. And thank you to the Blogging Project for having me here and allowing me to offer this content to you all. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Thank you again for being here, and it was a pleasure being with you all. I wish you lots of fun experimentation and practice with these things we've gone over today. And again, you're welcome to email me if things come up or if you have questions or if you're interested in one of those breakthrough coaching sessions.